Today's class is about the digging deep technique. This is something you're going to be using on your sales calls. This is a very powerful technique that allows you to increase the length of your conversations, increase the amount of rapport you're building with a lead, and ultimately increase your close rate, which is really what we're after. Now, remember, the digging deep technique is a part of a much larger sales call that you're learning here in the Conversion Club, the pre-call stalk, the perfect first minute where you gain control and you acknowledge, respond, and pivot. All of these lessons are here. Today's the digging deep technique. We'll follow this up with building trust and uncovering objections and the 5 yeses. And before we get started, I just wanted to remind you, those are all a part of the $1 billion sales script. Here in the Conversion Club, there's a tab. I believe it says bonuses. You click the tab. You are going to find the conversion code $1 billion sales script. And digging deep is a part of that script. And as you go through the Conversion Club and all of these lessons, you're actually just customizing the sales script to become your $1 billion sales script, which is really the most important thing, is that you can apply your business, your pros and cons, your knowledge of what you sell and your competitive landscape into this thing, very plug and play style. My name is Chris Smith. I'm the author of the Conversion Code. I created the $1 billion sales script. I'm the founder of the Conversion Club, and I'm going to be teaching you guys the class today. And as you know, my entire mantra, if you're in the Conversion Club, you should know this: stop chasing leads, start attracting clients. The beauty of doing marketing that's great is that you don't have to chase leads. And what's really nice about that is that when you get into the conversation, when you get into the call, when you get into the sales pitch, people are going to be infinitely more inclined to hear you out, move forward, want to talk to you if your marketing is high quality. You don't have to chase people around. But in the real world, most people's leads are average or low quality at best. And so we need every trick in the book to get them to hear us out and to have a meaningful conversation. If you define lead conversion, which is what I've done in the book and the research that I've done, it's when marketing, sales, and technology are working in harmony. It's when all 3 of those departments, if you will, in your business are all clicking. Many times, I meet people with a really strong sales organization. Their marketing is average or lame. I meet people that are great at marketing, but their technology is all discombobulated and all over the place. The goal is to get to all 3. But if I were to say within each bucket, if I said, okay, within each of these circles in the Venn diagram, I'm going to give you one thing that if the 3 of those are happening, it's the holy grail. It would be very simple. Marketing, it would be high quality leads. Technology, it would be fast response times. And for sales, it would be lengthy phone calls. If you're generating good leads and you follow up with them quickly and you have a long conversation with them, you have cracked the conversion code. That is the last step. Now, the call and there's all these other steps, I get it. But the mecca, if you really want to have a North Star to aim for, is marketing generating high quality leads, is our technology enabling us to follow up fast, and when we get people on the phone, is our talk time long? Are we actually having conversations that are 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes long? That's the mecca. So spot check that. You know, a lot of times it can feel overwhelming to try to crack the whole conversion code. I get it. So just dial in on those 3 things. The one on the screen that's probably the most difficult to crack the code on would be the high quality leads. But the fast response times and the things that I'm about to teach you that will create lengthy phone calls, you can improve those overnight. This is the length of a successful versus an unsuccessful phone call. So when we kind of dial in on the sales part of the Venn diagram, and we dial in on the fact that we want lengthy phone calls. Why? Because lengthy phone calls in this study, which was the largest study of sales calls ever done, when a cold call led to somebody booking an appointment, it was a 5-minute and 50-second call on average. The same calls when they were unsuccessful were 3 minutes and 14 seconds. So when you got a yes, it was almost double the amount of time that the conversation unfolded. And I'll be really honest, you may be generating leads from Facebook or Google or social media. You may be generating leads because you're purchasing leads. But the truth is, almost every call you're making is a version of a cold call. You're not cold calling them in the sense of grab the phone book, pick a page and dial. But if somebody was forced to register to look at a listing from a Facebook ad 14 months ago, they're kind of a cold call unless you've already kind of contacted them or made, kind of touch base with them over that time frame. But this is a call that leads to an appointment to do a full call. Almost 6 minutes, 3 minutes if it doesn't work. I remember LendingTree being one of the lead sources we had at Quicken Loans. And when you would get a LendingTree lead, it was sort of equally exciting and depressing. It was exciting because the LendingTree leads were legitimately looking to do something. They convert. It was depressing because what it really looked like when a LendingTree came in is it looked like this. It looked like every bank on the planet surrounding you, circling you, coming after you to get your business for a refinance, all promising you the best rate, all promising you the lowest costs. And your phone just starts blowing up. You quickly regret being in that funnel sometimes. And so I'm calling leads that are going to have to talk to Wells Fargo before they decide. Well, Wells Fargo's interest rate, and I don't know if this is the case today, but when I was working in 2007, 2008, Wells Fargo's interest rate was always lower than ours. Every day of the week. They had lower rates and they had lower costs. And so I knew if the person I'm speaking with goes and talks to these other sharks, they're going to end up choosing one that's not me. And so Quicken would instill it in us that we need to close people on one call because of that. And the way that you do that is you have as long of a conversation with them as you can. Because if you look at the truth, if we kind of are self-aware, people do not want to talk to two salespeople. People do not want to talk to two realtors. They don't even want to talk to one realtor. They don't want to talk to a lender. They don't want to talk to 3 lenders. Nobody wants to do that. We don't want to talk to a car salesperson. We want a car. We don't want to talk to a lender. We want a lower rate and a lower payment. We don't want to talk to a realtor. We just want to sell our house. But those are the people involved in that process. And so if you can kind of understand and be self-aware that these people are doing something that's not appealing, you can actually lean into the fact that you know they won't want to do it twice. Because think of it this way. If I get in touch with you quickly and I'm the first shark on the phone with you and we have a really great conversation and it's 45 or 50 minutes long, that now becomes what you think you're going to have to go do with these 3 or 4 other institutions. It wasn't a quick call. It wasn't, hey, here's the rate. What's their rate? Because when you do the conversion code call, especially the digging deep part we're going to go through, it's not going to be a quick call. So be first, talk the longest. And if you ask yourself kind of, what is it that we need to do to, and this is what's so fascinating when I say talk time, I have to be really careful there. You want to be on the phone with them the longest. You actually want them talking the most. And so the question becomes, how do I go from minute 0 to minute 40? I go there by getting them to fill the gap, not me. Obviously, I'm going to do my pitch and there's questions I have to ask. But as long as I can listen intently to the answers and then ask more and ask more, questions are what bridge the gap. And the beauty of it is, guess what? The number one thing that sales reps can do, this is from a huge study, the number one thing sales reps can do for a lead to make their experience positive is to listen to their needs. If you look at the data, the top sales reps on a call, 54% of the call they're listening, 46% of the call they're talking. If you compare that to average reps and bottom reps, it flips. A bottom rep is talking 72% of a call. Why is the bottom rep talking twice as much as the top rep? Shouldn't he be talking half as much? And so this is the secret sauce, is listening. And the only way to have 54% of a call be you listening is to ask great questions and to ask a lot of questions. See, when these top salespeople that are listening, when they actually start talking about the next steps, meaning they're going over the price, the terms, and they're closing. So this is a data around when during the call are these top versus average salespeople closing. And you can see the difference that the top performers are at 45 minutes and that the bottom or average salespeople are closer to 15 minutes. Because you're going to see if you don't dig deep, you may have 4 or 5 questions that you need to ask. And those questions can be asked and answered in a very, very short amount of time, depending on the person on the other end of the line. So questions are what get the top salespeople from minute 15 to minute 45. Great questions. This is actually the most exciting thing when I did the research for this chapter that I found. Close rates more than double when you get a lead to increase the length of their responses to your questions. So when we say questions and conversations and customers are created by conversations and conversations are what create clients, I think that's in my book like 74 times. It's true. When people open up more to you, when the answers are longer, the close rates are higher. That's it. That is actually living proof. That is data backing up the idea that people have to like you. Because for somebody to actually give you a long answer, they've got to be fairly engaged and interested. This is actually what happens when you ask a lot of questions. This is actually something that I found very fascinating, which was, how does the number of questions asked during a call impact the success rate of the call? And so if you look at the chart, as the number of questions asked increases, so does the success rate of the call. If you're asking 10, 11, 12, 13 questions, you're actually increasing your close rate significantly compared to asking only 4 questions or 3 questions or 2 questions. So you literally have to ask a lot of questions to get the highest conversion rate possible. Now, I will say that there is a back end of that data where there is a point where there's too many questions. But what you're going to learn in this lesson is that we're actually going to start with that 4.5. The only questions we are going to plan are about 4 to 6 questions. It's just that we're going to go from 4 to 6 over to 13.5 to 18 by digging deep. Those are going to be the questions that we're going to ask that take us from 4 to 15, and they're all based on the answers to the first 4. Dig deep or go to sleep. This is something that was ingrained in my brain when I was in the cubicle dialing for dollars. If I do not dig deep, if I do not uncover the emotional and logical reasons these people are wanting to work with us, I'm not going to get their business. I may as well take a nap. Like, I actually had it in my cubicle, like on the wall of my cubicle, dig deep or go to sleep. And you can see there right next to the liquor bottle, which I think is really funny. But you want to never forget the importance of this step, because this is where the money's made. This is where somebody, A, becomes great at sales, and then B, becomes enjoyable to be sold by. That's a big deal. It no longer is a sale when you dig deep. So the first step, we're going to start with 4 to 6 qualifying questions. And based on what you sell in your industry, and you're going to have different questions you need to ask. If I'm working with a real estate agent and I'm Zillow and I want to sell them leads, I have to ask them what their zip code is, right? That's a qualifying question for that particular sale. But if you're selling your home, I would have to ask you, what's your goal for the time frame? When do you need to be moved out by? So there's questions that you would ask that are specific to your industry and your model. But the reality is you don't have to necessarily overthink it. The qualifying questions are quite simply natural. You have to ask them or you can't actually answer them. So something like, how long have you been researching selling your home? Have you ever sold a home before? Why is now the right time to sell your home? How did you hear about hiring us to help you sell your home? These are sort of those stock questions that you could ask any lead at any time. Hey, how long you been researching buying a home? How long you been researching getting a life insurance policy? How long you been researching refinancing your mortgage? Have you ever done a life insurance policy before? Why did you guys decide now's the right time to get a new life insurance policy? How'd you find out about us and how'd you hear about us helping you with the policy? How'd you find out about us? So these are just stock questions, and you need to come up with these. But I think qualifying questions are a very dangerous thing, but they have a huge opportunity for differentiation. And I'll tell you what I mean by that, because I want you to start with 4 to 6 power questions, okay? A power question is going to be either framing the question better before you ask it, or it's actually just going to be a better question than what everyone else is asking. I bet if I had 10 conversations in a row with 10 realtors in a row and I was looking to buy a home, I bet all 10 would say almost the exact same thing about what's your price range, what area are you looking in, how many bedrooms do you need, and so back to that kind of lending tree idea, if all the people that are calling are all asking the same exact questions, a really quick and easy way to stand out would be to ask different ones. Now, ultimately, I've got to get the same answers, but this is a big opportunity. When I say power questions, I really want you guys to think about framing the question before you ask it. And then I want you to think about just asking it in a way that no one else is asking it. That is a power question. So for the first example, if we go back to how long have you been researching, instead of starting with that, I would say something like, most people spend months doing their own homework before we speak. How long have you been researching? See that? That is framing. That is positioning it. Most people are magic words from exactly what to say with Phil and Jimmy and myself. The course for exactly what to say is in the Conversion Club. So make sure if you haven't seen that, you check it out. But most people spend months doing their own homework before we speak. How long have you been researching? Or go back to the second one. Have you ever sold a home before? Selling a home can be extremely stressful. Have you ever sold a home before? That's framing. That's adding a little bit of color to the play-by-play. See, most of you guys are play-by-play announcers, and people buy from color commentators. That is very, very important to remember. Let's go to the third one. Why is now the right time to sell your home? Instead of starting with that, I would say a lot of people sell their home because something major happened, like getting married or having a kid. Why is now the right time for you to sell your home? See how I'm positioning it? I'm framing it. I'm making it more human. Let's go to the fourth one. How did you hear about hiring us to help you sell your home? I'm going to start with the majority of our 5-star reviews come from clients who found us on Zillow or from people who were referred to us. How did you hear about us helping you? So these are power questions. Now, the other part of this would be, I'm still kind of asking the same questions. I'm just kind of giving it a little bit of a framework, but I'm still in this example asking what most people ask. So if I'm a buyer lead and I talk to 15 real estate agents, everyone asks, what area are you looking in? What is your budget? What is your time frame? So the other part of asking a power question, besides framing it and providing that color commentary, is what we call simple swaps. Instead of asking these questions, we're going to swap them out for the same question asked differently. And because we're going to ask it differently, it's going to really open up the digging deep questions. So I would say, how long, as opposed to just saying, what area are you looking in? I could say, how long do you want your drive to work to be? Because if somebody says they want their drive to work to be under 30 minutes, okay, well, where do you work? Because then we can figure out the area from there. That's just a swap, a way of getting to the same answer of what area, but doing it in a roundabout way that's non-traditional, that is different. The second one, what is your budget? That could be asked differently. What is a comfortable monthly payment for you? Because if somebody tells me a comfortable monthly payment and I know what the average down payment is on a home, I can figure out their budget from there. But people typically think in monthly payments, not loan amounts. The other one, what is your time frame? Maybe we would say something like, when would you like to get the keys to your next house? So it's a little bit of theatrics. It's a little bit of framing. It's a little bit of differentiation, but these are very simple swaps you can make. The reason the screen has pencils on it for the 5 yeses is because you need to be writing down their answers to these questions that you're asking. So if somebody tells me that they want to live within 30 minutes of their job, and then they tell me that they want their payment to be less than $3,000 per month, and they tell me they want to get the keys to the next house in the next 90 days if possible. Okay, great. So I need to be writing that down. And even if I'm asking the digging deep questions, which I'm going to show you in a moment, I need to also be writing down the answers to that, because one of the steps down the road a little bit here in the Conversion Club, in the conversion code script, is the 5 yeses. And the 5 yeses is quite simply getting them to agree that earlier when I asked you blank, you said blank, right? That's called the 5 yeses, which we'll get to soon. So with a digging deep approach, it would be, how long do you want your drive to work to be? That's the question. We don't know the answer. This is why listening is so important. This is why there's actually no such thing as a script, because I don't know what the answer is going to be when I say, how long do you want your drive to work to be? I may be expecting them to say less than 1 hour. And then the answer is, I work from home. Okay. Well, you can see the next question is what I call a DDQ, the digging deep question, because that question is not on my script. That question is only being asked because of the answer they gave me to the question that I did plan. So they say, I work from home. I say, what do you do for a living? They say, I'm a teacher. I say, what subject and grade do you teach? They say, 7th grade science, right? So now all of a sudden I know that this guy works from home teaching 7th grade science, obviously remote learning and teaching. But in theory, the only question I was asking before was just how long do you want your drive to work to be, or where do you want to live? So now I know he's a teacher. I know he teaches 7th grade. I know he teaches science. I know he works from home, right? And what's interesting, and this is what is really fun about doing this the right way, is you have these moments where you actually build genuine rapport with the person, because by digging deep, you're actually getting kind of under the surface of who they are. So as an example, when I would say, what subject and grade do you teach? And he says, 7th grade science. I say, oh, my daughter's actually in 8th grade and her favorite subject is science. That is the rapport in sales that is incredibly difficult to quantify, but incredibly important to have appear. If you never dig deep, you never get to this important moment. Here's another example. What is a comfortable monthly payment for you? Their answer, we need to stay under $3,000 per month. The digging deep question, which you didn't plan, it's just what you thought of when they said that, is, how much do you pay monthly now? And then they said, our current payment is $1,800. And the digging deep question, which I wouldn't have thought of until they just gave me those two numbers, is what will it take to make your next home worth the extra $1,200 per month? And their answer in this example is, we need a guest house. I have to keep going. Who's going to be living in the guest house? See, this is just being good at conversations and being curious and asking questions and having genuine curiosity in the person that you're speaking with. Who's going to be living in the guest house? Answer, my father-in-law. Well, the digging deep question there would be, are you excited about that? And in this example, he says, not really. He's going to live with us because he has dementia. These are the things that are really happening that are causing people to do the things that you sell. Whether it's life insurance, mortgages, refinances, buying a home, selling a home, renting a property. There are typically important life moments that trigger that. And a question like, what's your budget, became a conversation about something much more important than their budget. This is getting to the why. This is an emotional example. Some people are more logical, but you never find either if you don't dig deep. When I talk about the science of sales, I talk about getting people more emotionally excited than the cost. That you have a certain amount of time to get somebody more emotionally excited than the cost. The example I just gave is a form of getting them emotionally excited about working with you. It doesn't have to be raw emotion that gets somebody more excited than the cost of working with you. Sometimes it's genuine emotion. The other thing I want you to remember is that when you're looking to elicit an emotion from someone, a lot of these conversations are happening over the phone. So just don't forget that while the words that I'm using today are important, the tone of your voice as you use these words is just as important. If you sound like you're kind of barely listening and you're on your phone and yeah. Oh yeah, cool. Where are you guys moving? Yeah. Like the tone is critical. And so keep that in mind, that we are trying to dig deep in an effort to find an emotional reason for why they should hire us. And the words do that, but the tone does that too. The body language isn't there. You're on the phone. The last tip, and this is actually just to end on a little bit of a lighter note, but it does speak to rapport and letting your guard down and keeping it real with people. This I thought was so fascinating. When both people curse on a call, the salesperson and the lead, the conversion rate is 8% higher. So this is something where I have to be very careful. I don't want you to just hop on your next call and just drop the F-bomb because you saw this chart. But people work with people that they feel a connection with, that they trust, that they think are sharp, that they think are genuine. And you hear it all the time that, people become friends with their clients, and friends curse, right? So I wouldn't be the one that would start it, but I can tell you that there's been many times where the prospect may have cursed on a call with me, and that was sort of my permission to curse as well. But it does speak to rapport. It does speak to the power of emotion and relationships and that special thing that happens when you break through that ice and that brick wall that people start with. So here's your homework. You need to develop 4 to 6 power questions. These need to be a combination of framing the question, the color commentary part, and they also need to be unique questions that aren't the same questions everyone else asks. Part 2, I want you to find somebody to role play the digging deep questions with. If you need to find a partner, I'm sure somebody else in the conversion club would be happy to do this with you. People in your office, people at your brokerage, people on your team. But it's really important that you role play this, because this is one of the best role plays, because it's actually a real world scenario. Because in the real world, you don't know what the person will say. Their answer triggers your question, and then your answer to that question triggers their next one. So a role play around digging deep is actually incredibly a realistic simulation. So I could sit there with someone and I can actually, I already know what my first questions are because I developed my power questions, but I don't know what the answer is going to be from the person role playing with me. So they can create that sort of uncertainty of what the answer is going to be. And that's a really good way to practice this. Now, ultimately, no matter what you ask, there will be some answers that are similar, but digging deep is a role play scenario that I think is worth all of your time. Thanks for tuning in. This has been another great lesson in the Conversion Club. You can check out all the other lessons. We have audio, video, cheat sheets. We do live events every single month, bonus material. Thank you guys for being students.